All right, we set up the workspace, the page setup, and the drawing scale in the first video. And if you need to see how to do any of that again, just click on the link up in the corner of the screen right now. Now, we're not going to get much drawing done in this video, but we're going to cover some essential concepts that will make everything that you do from now easy and precise. You're going to learn the basics of the rectangle tool, but more importantly, we're going to cover the floating data bar and how to use it. We're going to talk about how to change an object using the object info palette and a lot about how to select and move objects. So check the description for timestamps. And I know these first few tutorials aren't very exciting, but if you learn these essential concepts at the start, everything we do will be easier. And if you try to rush it, you're going to struggle forever. So it's just like learning the Force. So if you closed Vectorworks after the last video, then start up the program and select your saved document from the home screen, or simply double click on the file where you saved it on your computer. So we're going to start by drawing an elevation of a basic theatrical door flat. An elevation is a drawing of a vertical surface of a building or a set. In other words, it's drawing the walls rather than a map of the floor plan. So walls and flats are typically rectangles. So let's find the rectangle tool in the basic tool sets. And if you can't find your basic tool palette or any other one, then go back to the first video at the 4-minute mark. The rectangle tool is the one that looks like a rectangle. You can also hit the $4 key above your letters there. But remember, don't click on the numbers on a full-sized keyboard's 10-key number pad, if you have one of those, unless you're entering numbers into a data field. That's fine. But if you accidentally bump one of those keys while you're working in the viewport, you're going to push yourself into a 3D view. If that happens, just hit the 0 key on the number pad to get back into the top plan 2D view. So click on the rectangle icon and then move the cursor down into the lower left corner of the page. It doesn't have to be right in the corner, just kind of down in that area. Click once and just push the mouse up and to the right. No dragging required. Now notice that blue box that has just appeared next to the cursor. This is the floating data bar, and that makes drawing precisely very easy. So hit the tab key once and notice that the first field in the data bar is highlight. Now, using either the numbers at the top of your keyboard or the numbers on your number pad, if you have one, just type 48, just 4 and 8, nothing else, and then hit the tab key again. Vectorworks defaults to inches, so typing in 48 and nothing gives us 48 inches or 4 feet. Now notice the red dashed line that has appeared. That's showing where 4 feet is from your first click. It hasn't locked in any changes yet, but it's ready to. So now in the delta Y field, type in 8 and apostrophe. That's the key just to the left of the enter or the return key on most keyboards. Now hit enter or return again, or left click, and now there should be another red dashed line at the 8-foot height mark. So now you can go back and change any of these numbers, but 4x8 is what we want, so hit the enter or return key again. That orange around the rectangle is letting us know that this is the selected object. And sure enough, if we look up in the object info, we should see the word rectangle in both the top. We're going to talk about class and layer and plane in a different video, but notice that there are fields for width and height, and they should say width 4 foot 0 inches and height 8 foot 0 inches. The X and the Y below here are for the shape's position on the paper, but we're not going to worry about that right now. So go ahead and select the numbers in the width field. Hit backspace or delete, and then type in 24, and enter. And okay, so for all you Mac users, I'm just going to say enter from now on rather than enter or return. So when I say enter, just hit the return key. And I may also forget to say control or command. Most of the keyboard shortcuts for Mac users use the command key for the shortcuts. So if I say control M or something like that, just hit command M. Give that a try. Okay, now notice that the rectangle on the screen is now thinner. It's 2 foot wide, and you can use these fields whenever you want to parametrically change the size of objects. And there are things that you can do to basic shapes where you're going to lose this option, but as long as you're using basic shapes, you can select them and change their dimensions at any time. Now, notice that when we typed in 24 and nothing else, Vectorworks interpreted that as 24 inches and converted it into 2 foot 0 inches in the field. In Vectorworks, you never need to type the quotes for inches. You hold a shift key down and the apostrophe key to get quotes. Now, it doesn't hurt if you do that, but it's just going to default to inches unless you type in the apostrophe key. No shift required there. Just hit the apostrophe key after number and it's going to read that as feet. So for example, if I wanted to make the rectangle 2 foot 6 inches, then I would select the field and type in 2 apostrophe 6 nothing and then enter. and then the rectangle is resized to 2'6". You could also type in 30 and nothing, and 30 inches would translate to 2'6". So go ahead and reset the width to 48, 4 feet, however you want to do that, 48 or 4 apostrophe. Now, without getting too complicated, let me briefly explain what these 9 dots are down here. I'm hitting the X key on my keyboard to get the selection tool. Now, that's a really important one. You can come up to the basic tool sets and click on it if you need to, but if you're going to learn one hotkey, it should be the X key, because you're going to need the selection tool all the time. Hitting the X key is kind of like clearing out the tool that you're using, like you're drawing some rectangles. Well, now I'm done drawing rectangles, and I want to move these rectangles around. Well, if you just click and drag again, you're going to draw another rectangle. So in order to get that selection tool out, you're going to hit that X key. Just hit that X key, learn that keyboard shortcut. It's going to save you so much time, because you're going to have to reach up there and click on that 1,000 times over a project. So hit that X key to get the selection tool. And now selecting the rectangle with the selection tool makes these 8 control handles appear. There's also one in the very center of the object. Those blue squares correspond to these 9 dots. So see how the upper right dot is selected? The X and Y coordinates are here, giving the location of that upper corner relative to the center of the drawing. Later, I'll show you how to set that origin to a more useful location. But watch what happens when I change the height of the rectangle to 4 feet. See how the top stayed where it was and the rectangle was shortened from the bottom? Now, let me undo that with Control or Command Z. Hopefully you already know that keyboard shortcut because it's used everywhere. Control or Command Z to undo. And this time I'm going to select the bottom left corner and shorten the height to 4 foot again. And see how it shortened it from the top this time and left the bottom alone? That can be very useful. In the next video, I'm going to show you a really useful trick with using these center dots. But go ahead and undo and put it back to 8 foot if you've been following along. All right, let me show you some other important things about the data bar. I'm going to draw another rectangle here just to demonstrate. You can just watch. I'm going to click once and push up and to the right, just like we did before. Now notice how both the numbers in the X and the Y are positive. Remember, X is left and right and Y is up and down, just like when you were graphing equations back in high school algebra. If I move the cursor below my first click, you can see how the X number is still positive, but the Y numbers are negative. If I go up and to the left, then the X numbers are negative and the Y becomes positive again. And if I go down and to the left, then both the X and the Y are negative. So X is side to side. To the right is positive, to the left is negative. Y is up and down in 2D, and up is positive and down is negative. Pretty self-explanatory. We clicked in the lower left corner when we drew the 4x8 rectangle, so because we were drawing up and to the right, both of the numbers we entered were positive. And you can draw in any direction you want. For example, I can hit the tab key to highlight the X field and type in -12, -12, and tab again. Now I can type in -1 apostrophe and enter, and I've drawn a 1 foot by 1 foot box. I just drew it down and to the left of my first click instead of up and to the right. So you can draw in any direction you want, and I can use inches or a number and an apostrophe interchangeably. So one more thing about the data bar. If you keep hitting the tab, you're going to expose other fields. L is for length, and in the case of a rectangle, it's the corner-to-corner length of that gray dashed line that you see. Angle is the angle of that line, and X and Y are tracking the page location of the other 2 corners. You rarely need these extra fields, but if you overshoot your field, you can just hit Shift-Tab to go backwards, or do what I usually do and just mash the tab key again until it wraps back around. So remember, you need to enter or left click to set the shape. If you still see the red dashed lines, then it's waiting for you to tell it that you're happy. So hit enter or return or left click. And if you change your mind later, you already know how to select an object and change its dimensions in the object info palette. So you can also hit the escape key, that's the one up on the top left of your keyboard, to cancel any operation that you're in the middle of. So if you start using a tool and realize, oh wait, this is the wrong tool, I just want to stop, I want to get out of this, it's like hitting clear on your calculator, it just like stops. So the escape key is useful for that. And then remember to hit the X key again if you want to move or select something. I'm just going to keep on repeating that because I see students struggle with that all the time. They draw a rectangle and they want to move that rectangle, and then they click and drag and start drawing another rectangle instead of selecting and moving the rectangle. So hit that X key if you want to move or select something. In this case, the rectangle tool is going to stay active until I select another tool. Okay, so with the selection tool, you can also click on any one of these 8 blue boxes and then click to resize it. and just click again to set the new size. Sometimes it's useful to move an object by its corner without resizing it. So remember the mode bar. That's the area above the workspace that changes how a tool behaves. So notice that the second icon up here of the select tool has a gray background. Hover over the icon for a second, and the tooltip will let you know that this is the single object interactive scaling mode. That's a fancy way of just saying we can click on any one of these blue squares and resize the object manually, like I just did. But click on the icon to the left to disable that scaling mode, and notice how the blue squares have disappeared. Now watch as I click and drag from a corner. This is one of the rare times when you do want to drag with the mouse button down. So now I can snap the corner to the center or to any other reference point or any other corner of any other object. And when I release the mouse button, I've snapped that rectangle to the new location. And by the way, if you aren't seeing the screen hints, then make sure that there is a gray background or a blue in earlier versions behind all but the very first of these snapping settings up here. The first one is for grid snapping. We don't want that turned on. But all of these should be gray. And unless you've been playing with these, they should be by default. So just make sure that they're there. I'm going to reactivate the interactive scale mode right now, and then with the selection tool active, you can click and drag on any object around the screen. So just avoid the blue control points if you don't want to rescale them, or you can just deactivate it like I just did. Okay, so now let me get rid of all these extra boxes. With the selection tool active, I can click on any rectangle. Now, note that Vectorworks has this pre-selection orange highlight thing that can be a little confusing at first. When you just hover over an object, it's going to glow orange, but it's not selected until you click on it. And notice that when I click on it, it now says rectangle in the object info palette. So to deselect anything, just simply click in a blank area of the screen. Or you can double tap the X key to deselect everything selected. You could have 20 things selected, just hit the X key twice, it's going to deselect everything. So I'm holding down the Shift key as I click on multiple rectangles to select multiple objects. This is just like when you're selecting files or folders on your desktop or whatever. You've done this before. So hold the Shift key to select multiple things. And notice that the object info is updating with the numbers of the selected rectangles. If you select something other than a rectangle, it will switch to objects. So it'll say, 5 objects or whatever. But if you select something in a group that you didn't want, you can hold down the Shift key and just click again to take it out of the group. But remember, it's going to stay orange if your cursor is still on top of it. So you need to move your cursor away to make sure that you have deselected it. It can be a little confusing at first. Now I'm hitting the X key twice to deselect them all. And you can also click and drag with the selection tool and draw a blue box around multiple objects to select multiple objects. So normally you need to draw the box completely around the object to select it, but if you hold down the Alt or the Option key, then any object the blue box is touching will be selected. I'll hit the Delete key or the backspace key on my keyboard to delete the selected boxes. And there are a lot of other advanced ways to make selections, but that's good enough for now. So I know we've only drawn one rectangle in this whole video, but let's take a break as we've covered a lot of very important concepts. It'll start going faster, I promise. Save and join me in the next video, and I promise we'll draw the front view of that door flat and learn several more useful tools and commands.